guys, what is up? It's a J&J Hockey Podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Josiah.
And today we have lots of different topics to get into. So we'll be talking Hall of Fame, who we think should and shouldn't have got in. We'll also be talking about the new CBA. And so, yeah, I think this will be a really fun podcast. But let's just get right into it, starting with the class, or with the 2020 Hockey Hall of Fame class, so we kind of know who we're talking about a little bit. So, Josiah, why don't you read that out to us?
So, the 2020 people that were inducted were Jerome McGinley, Marian Hossa, Doug Wilson, what's that girl's name? Her last name is St. Pierre. What's her first name?
Kim St. Pierre.
And Kevin Lowe and Ken Holland.
Yep. Okay, so I think I'll start here for who I think should and shouldn't have gotten in this year.
Okay.
So just a quick recap: Jerome McGinley, Marian Hossa, Kevin Lowe, Doug Wilson, Kim St. Pierre, and Ken Holland got in. And so I think this is interesting one. Definitely a stronger class than last year, where I think the strongest candidate was like D. Carbonneau or like him. And if he's your strongest guy, no offense to D. Carbonneau, then it's kind of a weaker class. I think Jerome McGinley leading this class makes it pretty solid. I think it's a pretty solid class. Jerome McGinley definitely in. He won a Rocket Richard Trophy, King Clancy, Art Ross, and Ted Lindsay. 6-time All-Star, was one of the most loved NHLers possibly of all time. Unfortunately, he never won a Stanley Cup, but he will go down as probably one of the best players never to win one. Marian Hossa is kind of a different beast. I feel like he's the type of guy that probably should have gotten in a future year, but he's not like a first ballot kind of guy, in my opinion. He was a winner. He won 3 Stanley Cups, unlike Iggy, but no individual awards, which for me is kind of a major thing in the Hall of Fame. If you don't have any individual awards, it kind of signifies that you weren't good enough to win it. So if you're just not good enough to win an individual award, then you probably shouldn't be making the Hall of Fame. There are exceptions, of course. It's like guys like Dale Hawerchuk. I feel like he deserves to be in. I mean, you can't really exactly blame him for not being able to beat out Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux, right, all the time, because that's just not fair. No one, you don't expect people to do that. So I think that he should have gotten in, probably just not this year. Kim St. Pierre, I don't know too much about her. I don't follow the women's hockey as much as the men's. But she, according to NBC Sports, she's got 3 gold medals from the Olympics, 5 from the World Championships, and then won a gold medal at the Four Nations Cup. Played 83 games for Canada, winning 64 of them with 29 shutouts. And she earned best goalie honors at the 2002 Olympics, and also at the World Championships in 2001 and then 2004. And in the CWHL, which is the Women's League, she's named the League's top goaltender 2 years in a row. So, based on that, I think she definitely deserves to be in the women's side. She's the first woman goalie to get in, which is pretty cool. And then we're getting into the final 3 here. So Kevin Lowe is the next guy that got in. I don't think he should get in, and Josiah will get into this later because he really did not think that he should get in. The only really major thing that I think should get him in is the fact that he won 6 Stanley Cups in his career, 5 with Edmonton and 1 with the Rangers. He was the defensive defenseman in the Gretzky-era Oilers. But other than that, no Norris, no all-star team, not a lot of points. I just don't think he has the case for the Hall of Fame there. I feel like if you were going to put him in, then you probably put him in as a builder, and even that would be unlikely. Meanwhile, Doug Wilson, I've been tooting Doug Wilson's horn to get into the Hall of Fame for quite a while now. So he got 237 goals, 827 points, and won the 1982 Norris Trophy. And also was an 8-time All-Star and won a couple of gold medals on the international stage. And this is playing during an era with Paul Coffey and Ray Bourque, among others, right? Like Dennis Potvin and Brad Park, I think. Was Brad Park in this era? I think he was.
Maybe.
Yeah, so
In this, Brad Park was in at the end of was in the Bobby Orr era, and then also like a little after, and he played a bit longer than Bobby.
Yeah, that's right. So he was kind of at the end of his career. Anyway, and the last guy is Ken Holland. I don't know who the builders class was for this year. I feel like if Ken Holland was the best that you had, it's kind of a weaker class. Not because I don't think he deserves to get in. Like if you look at his resume, he got 4 Stanley Cups, one as an assistant GM, and the other is 3, and the other 3 as main GM. He won 10 Central Division titles with the Red Wings and 4. Not to mention, so far what he's building with the Oilers is actually looking pretty good. And since Josiah's more of the Oilers fan than I am, he might talk about that when it's his turn. So I think, I think it made sense that he gets in. I just don't know why it had to be this year, you know? So I think with Holland and Hossa, probably not this year, but definitely in the future. Kevin Lau, no, probably shouldn't have got in. And Doug Wilson, Kim St. Pierre, and Jerome McGinley, yes, for sure. So now it's Josiah's turn. What do you think?
So I think Hossa should get in. McGinley, Wilson maybe. I'm not really going to talk about a women's goalie because I know nothing about women's hockey. Holland maybe, and Kevin Lowe. What on earth are these people on?
Dude.
Seriously though. Why on earth would they put Kevin Lowe, who never had better than a 50-point season, in an offensive-dominated era?
Yep.
I mean, McGinley, Alexander Mogenly, Alfredson, all these guys aren't in. Why did he get in? Like, seriously. What is wrong? Like, why would he not?
So why do you think, like, Iginla and Hossa and Wilson and such should be getting in this year?
Well, I mean, Iginla's a no-brainer. Hossa played for so long and did get a lot of points. And like you said, he won 3 Stanley Cups.
Just quick look at this page here. You got 1,134 points in 1,309 contests.
So yeah, I think he deserves to get in.
But no individual awards, though, so that obviously doesn't mean as much to you to get in the Hall of Fame as it does to me, so why is that?
I mean, I guess, I don't know, you could put him in, you could or couldn't put him in. I mean, it's just totally, I guess maybe he definitely was going to get in at some point, maybe it didn't have to be this year. I was just looking. Another guy you could have brought in though is Sergei Zubov, who is a way better defenseman than Kevin Lowe. Why on earth did you pick Kevin Lowe?
Because Sergei Zubov was inducted last year.
Okay, never mind. This list is old then. Sorry. So, I mean, I don't know. Is there a rule that they have to adopt one defenseman every year in the Hall of Fame?
There's not a particular rule, but I feel like even if there isn't, even if there was, or even though there isn't a rule, I don't feel like there needs to be. There definitely had to have been stronger candidates than Kevin Lau. There's nothing wrong with Kevin Lau, and like props to him for having an NHL career. I never could, but Hall of Fame, I just don't think so.
And plus, they already put Doug Wilson in, right?
Doug Wilson, yeah, they got him in this year. I wonder if can you induct someone twice in the Hall of Fame? Because I feel like he also deserves to be in as a builder.
Who?
Doug Wilson.
Oh. What exactly did he do?
I think he's done an excellent job as Sharks GM. So
who is he GM of right now? Or is he not GM anymore?
The Sharks.
Okay. So yeah, maybe I don't know a lot about GMs, but unless it's the Oilers GM.
I think Lau shouldn't have gotten in, and possibly some others. Then who should have replaced them, and why?
The main one is Lau. And who could have replaced him? Alfredson or probably Alfredson or McGillney.
Yep.
And then if somebody was going to replace, what's his face, Ken Holland, then it should have been Don Cherry.
Yeah, I think he would have been a good choice too.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, he would have been a controversial choice if he had been chosen. Man, there would have been a lot of people, like really against the NHL. Because I've never seen a person have more of a love-hate relationship with the public than Don Cherry. But
yeah, I guess.
Okay. Anyway, so I think Lau and Hossa shouldn't have gotten in this year. Like, not Lau possibly ever, but he would have gotten in at some point anyway. And then not Hossa this year, as I said before. As a builder, yeah, you could have put in Don Cherry. I don't know. I feel like I don't know what you're classifying him as, because I don't really know how he's a builder per se. But I guess you could classify him as one. So, anyway, I think Alexander McGillney, he's like possibly the most popular choice to get in the Hall of Fame that isn't already. Like, he should have been in the Hall of Fame. Like, he should be in the Hall of Fame already. Like, not waiting 11 years, right? So he's the first Russian player to defect to the West. So without him, you probably don't see a lot of Russian players like Sergei Fedorov and Alexander Ovechkin and players like that. He had a 76-goal year, and he won the Rocket Richard Trophy that year. Obviously, it's like I think it's a top 10 in most goals in 1 year. So how can a player that good? Not be in the Hall of Fame? I don't know. So I think McGillney's one choice, and then the other is Tom Barrasso. So the Hockey News put it like this in their top 100 goalies of all time. So imagine you have a team, say, with like a solid goaltending tandem. Say they said at the time the Sharks, because Martin Jones and Aaron Dell were actually considered good goalies, and they were. So say you have this tandem and you have like the 6th overall pick, right? And you decide to take a college goalie and kind of take a flyer on him because you have 2 other first-round picks. So you take a flyer on this guy, and suddenly he decides instead of going to college, he wants to go straight to the NHL. You laugh, and then you watch. You watch as Tom Barrasso leads your team all the way to the playoffs. I believe they lost. I think the Sabres lost either in the second round or the conference final that year, and win the Vezina and the Calder Trophy. Well, that was the start of Tom Barrasso's career. So if you'd like to tell me a better start to someone's career, it'd kind of be hard to top that. Anyway, so that's why I think Barrasso should be in practically almost right off that year. But not only that, when you're comparing him to a more popular choice like Mike Richter, Richter never won a Vezina or a Calder, and Barrasso has more Stanley Cups from his time with Pittsburgh. So I don't understand why Richter is so popular when Barrasso is not. I think both of them should get in at some point, but Barrasso, I believe, should be first. And then obviously you got guys like Daniel Alfredson. Again, the whole individual awards thing. He was a really well-loved captain. 1,157 points in 1,246 games. He's and won the Calder Trophy as well. So he's got a case. I think he'll get in at some point. He will. Probably not next year, because as we'll talk about later, the next year's class is kind of loaded. But he'll probably get in, depending on who's up in 2022, he'll get in at some point. And he's only been eligible for, a few years here, so it's not like I don't think they're in a massive rush to induct him. I think another interesting choice is also, Rod Brind'Amour, too. He was a 2-time Selke winner. I think Marian Hossa and Guy Carbonneau's inductions from the past 2 years really strengthened the case for Rod Brind'Amour. Those guys were lauded as defensive specialists, and Brind'Amour was as well, except Brind'Amour actually won 2 Selkies. The other 2 didn't win any. And he also has 1,184 points in 1,484 games. So I think Brindamore arguably had a stronger case this year than Hossa, and last year for Carbonneau. So it's only a matter of time, I feel, before he's in. Another popular choice, I think, is Theron Fleury. 1,088 points in 1,084 games. So just over a point per game by like 4. Won a Stanley Cup. Didn't win in an individual award, but, I mean, he invented one of the most famous sellies ever. Like the one where he rushes across the ice, grabs on, or gets on his knees and like slams into the boards at full speed. That was kind of interesting to watch. And he was also an incredible agitator. And he survived as like a really small guy in a league where being small didn't exactly help your case, even more than it does now. But he's been eligible since 2009, so I feel like if he's gonna be inducted, it has to be pretty soon, because I think there is a point in your career where eventually you're probably not going to be noticed very much. I mean, it's not always true. Like, look at Doug Wilson and Kevin Lau. Both of them waited for over 20 years. And then Rodi Vachon in, like, 2017 or 2018 waited 40 years. So, you know, like, guys like that, I think, definitely have a possibility of getting in. Another choice that you mentioned, Josiah, if you want to take over, you can, is Keith Tkachuk. So why did you think he should be in?
I guess mainly just because I forgot about him, but he could easily be in too. Yeah.
Okay, so he met the elusive 500 goal mark and 1,065 points in 1,201 games. So I don't know. He was also an excellent agitator. But no individual awards, never, and only got beyond the second round of the playoffs once. So I don't know. He doesn't have any, like he had like not a lot of playoff experience, so never even came close to the Stanley Cup. No individual awards either. So I don't think he has a strong enough case.
Keith Tkachuk?
No, I don't think he has a strong enough case. He'll get in eventually, because eventually the Hall of Fame will have a year where they're going to need to induct a bunch of these guys. Like, at some point it'll happen. But, yeah, I don't know. So, why don't you take over here for the start of our net segment, which is who do you think should get in for 2021?
So who's going to be eligible?
We got the Sedin twins, we got Henrik Zetterberg, Jaromir Jagr, Scott Hartnell, and then all the guys I've mentioned will all be eligible.
Okay, well, probably all 4 of those guys will be in.
Also Mike Fisher and, guys like that. Well,
yeah, I'm pretty sure that all the guys that are becoming eligible are probably going to be the ones going in 8. A.k.a. Jagr, the Sedin sisters, and...
Seriously?
Henrik Zetterberg.
I think those 4 will be getting in too. The thing is, I'm not sure, like, on the women's side, I don't even know who's eligible, so we're not really going to mention that. As a builder, I think next year will probably be Don Cherry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are other guys, like Ron McLean, his sidekick, might even be a more popular choice, because a lot of people really don't like Don Cherry, because he's Don Cherry.
Do you like him?
He's a little outspoken, but pretty entertaining. So, I don't know. I mean, I think the podcast life suits him a lot more, because the idea of podcasts is to speak your mind, and that's all Cherry ever does. So,
yep.
I think his podcast is a lot more suitable for him. It's actually on Spotify if you wanted to listen to it. Just because it just suits him more, and then he's not going to be scrutinized by the media like every single time he makes a comment that's not popular. On his podcast, he can just speak his mind a little more, even more freely than he already did. So yeah, that's why I think the podcast is a lot more suitable for him. So yeah, that's who we think should get in for 2021. So those are some of the players eligible as well. I'm not sure who's available for 2022, but we don't really have to look that far. But it sounds like McGillney and Bereso and the rest of the guys we've talked about will have to wait at least another year after next year with the loaded 2021 class. I feel like for sure the Sedin twins and and Yager. I didn't know Yager was available because I thought he was still playing in the KHL. But if he is, Yager and the Sedin twins for sure. I don't know if Zetterberg would get in, but I think he's very likely. All right, so anyway, let's move on here to the next topic, which is the new CBA. So I opened an article here about it. So the rules are the current CBA, which has 2 years remaining, will be extended for 3 years, and it will expire in the 2024-25 season. The upper limit of the salary cap will be frozen at $81.5 million for the 2020-21 season, and then the year after that. And then in 2022-23, it will rise to $82.5 million, and then $83.5 million the year after that. So that's good. So the salary cap will be risen by a couple million, a little bit. And it will be delinked from revenue for the first time since the owners achieved cost certainty in 2005-06. And the last year of the deal will possibly relink with revenues. So basically, I think what it's saying is that the salary cap is linked to how much revenue the NHL makes. And so that means that only the last year of the deal is possible so that it could be linked to the revenues. I understand if that makes your head hurt. Don't worry. The escrow cap for next season will be a maximum of 20% regardless of revenues, though it could end up being less. There will be a 10% deferral of compensation for every player, an amount that will be paid back to them in equal installments, subject to escrow in the final 3 seasons of the deal. So in reality, players will have 30% taken off their salaries next season. Okay,
what was that? 30%?
Will be taken off their salaries next season.
Okay.
Okay, and then for the year 2 of the deal, the escrow cap will be 18%, and then the following year it'll be 12%, and then the year after that it'll be 9%. And then here's the part that I really want to get into, and I'm super excited, and I'm sure you guys are excited too. Olympic participation for the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing and the 2026 Games in Milan will be enshrined in the deal, meaning that the NHLers are going to be going back to the Olympics in 2022 and in 2026. And then the last rule is that any player will be permitted to opt out of participating in the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs for any reason, and it will not affect his contract going forward. Meaning that any players in the NHL can choose not to play in this year's playoffs for any reason, and it will not affect their salary.
Oh, so players don't have to play in the playoffs?
They don't have to if they don't want to, no.
I would think that they would want to, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, and you would think they would, but some might not. Anyway, so what do you think?
It's great that that they're playing in the playoffs. That they're playing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, there's not the whole salary thing. I don't know. It's just, I guess they have to cover up for what they lost this year or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Sure.
And I mean, besides that, that's about it, probably. I don't know. What do you think?
So it's gonna be for 5 more years, expiring in 2024-25. So I guess the rules are taking over for the final 2 years of this year's CBA, which means that there won't be a lockout for at least another 5 years. Which, obviously awesome. Us fans don't want to be locked out for, we don't want another 2004-05. I like that the salary cap is rising. It's obviously more entertaining to the fan, and it also means that the NHL is not losing as much revenue as we thought, because otherwise, it is staying flat for the next 2 years at 81.5, and that means that a lot of teams are going to have to kind of drop some players, not to mention with the expansion draft coming up with Seattle probably this summer, and we will do a podcast on that later on when the time comes closer. And then, but it will rise another $2 million in the 2 years after that. It's not a massive deal, but every little bit helps these NHL teams. So that's That's good. The escrow cap doesn't really affect us. It affects the players, which is why the players will probably hate this CBA. Just because they're getting 30% taken off their salaries next season. So basically, all the money you think that they're making, a lot of it is lopped off and given back to the NHL. So like the 12.5 McDavid makes, around 30% of that will be cut off of his salary and given back to the NHL. So he'd be making, what, $10 million or something? It's still a lot of money, but it's not as much as we all think.
He'd be making 8.75.
8.75? Yeah, so he's making as much as we think Crosby's making, except that Crosby would only be making like $5 million. Again, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money for sure. But it's just when we look at the NHL salaries, I think we forget that in reality a lot of it is lopped off, Given back. Olympic participation is the biggest thing to me. I was shocked that that's even happening. Like, the NHL seemed really against it. But I'm just glad they're doing it. I haven't really had a major international experience with the exception of the 2016 World Cup. Because I don't really remember. I was born in 2006. I'm 14. So I don't really remember the 2014 Olympics that much. Obviously, I've watched highlights of it, obviously, and I've watched the Golden Goal and stuff like that in 2010, and I've seen these moments. Like, I've rewatched the games of the Summit Series in 1972. It's not the same as watching it live, though, and having that anticipation and not knowing who's winning, right? So, obviously, and the World Cup, I felt Canada was just it was just a little bit boring to watch, perhaps, just because they dominated just so much that, and the only team that we thought could really hang with them, the Americans, for some reason, really struggled. So, I think next Olympics, it'll be easier. Guys I doubt Jonathan Toews, for example, will make that team. I just think he's not as good as he used to be. Obviously, McDavid will be on that team. Eichel's American, so he'll be on the American team. So I think that'll be really cool when you watch them, because then you have that extra little bit of little rivalry there, McDavid versus Eichel.
That's not much of a rivalry, if we're being honest.
It is a little bit of a rivalry. Not to mention, the Americans are adding other players too. Like Seth Jones will be on that team. Austin Matthews will be on that team too.
Yeah, but Marner, Nylander, all these other guys will be on the Canadian team. And Mark Stone. Max Teixeira will be on the American team.
William Nylander is from Sweden.
Actually, he was born in Calgary, Alberta.
Pretty sure he's Swedish. Anyway.
Oh, but whatever.
Okay, so I think it'll be interesting to watch those. So, pretty much, almost the best, Canada, I think, will have the best center, I think they'll be the best at center by far. They're going to have McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, Bergeron. So McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, Bergeron. Yeah, those will probably be their centers. Bergeron will be the defensive specialist. Crosby will be the leader. McDavid will be the point maker. And then McKinnon will be the other point maker. I guess. So I think I think the next Olympics will be strong, super strong with all these, because at the World Cup all these youngsters were on Team North America and it was entertaining to watch, but they weren't playing on their actual countries, and obviously the gimmick teams from the World Cup, Team Europe and Team North America, won't be there at the Olympics. So I really feel like Canada. And the Americans are probably the only two major contenders, the only two that actually have a really good chance at a gold medal. Sweden and Finland are always dangerous. Finland will have a strong offense, a good goaltending, because they'll have Tuukka Rask, and then Sweden too will have really strong defense. Not as good as at the World Cup, because Erik Karlsson isn't as good as he used to be, but it'll still be, and not to mention Oliver Ekman Larsson as well. But it'll still be really strong. They'll still have not as good of an offense, but still pretty good. Like Gabriel Landeskog will be there, and then other players as well. And goaltending will be led by Robin Lehner and Jacob Markstrom. So their goaltending will actually be stronger because Henrik Lundqvist last time was the goalie. He wasn't like amazing, but also at the time Jacob Markstrom and Robin Lehner weren't the really good goalies that we see today. So I don't know who's starting. So who do you think would be starting between Lehner and Markstrom?
I thought Leonard was a Canadian, or no, was he not?
No, they're both Swedish.
It's actually a tough one. I'm not sure.
I think right now you'd probably give I don't know. We were talking about it the other day, and I said that it kind of depends on the team. I feel like in a best on best tournament, I feel like you go with Lehner because Markstrom has the ability to turn on his head, but he's also really inconsistent, and he can give up a lot of weak goals. I mean, mixing that with making a lot of spectacular saves. If you don't believe me, watch his save against the Sharks from this year, or the save against the Blackhawks this year, or the save against Nashville, and I could go on. But I think Markstrom's more inconsistent than Lehner, and that's not what you want. So I'd give the edge to Lehner in starting, especially since in a few years, Markstrom's older than Lehner, so Markstrom will be, 34 and Lehner 30? So I'd give the edge to Lehner then, definitely. And then Lundqvist by that Olympics will probably be retired, so.
Sure.
Alright, so, and then Finland, their offense will be decent. They'll have, like Patrick Laine there. And then, like, last at the World Cup, they had a bunch of youngsters that have aged. Their defense isn't going to be super strong, but, goaltending will be pretty good. Rask hasn't proven he can stand on his head. That's the only thing, because the Bruins have one of the best defenses in the NHL. So Rask has never had to prove that he can stand on his head, but I think he will have to at the Olympics. So I feel like those four, and then also Russia as well, are probably the major contenders for the championship, because I feel like everyone considers the Czech Republic like a big-time contender, and then they never really are a big-time contender, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just what I think. I think in the end, it'll either be Canada or the Americans taking it. I think it comes down to who's in goal, honestly, for both these countries. I think Carter Hart probably will be starting for Canada at the time, and then possibly John Gibson for the Americans.
Okay.
So who do you think will be starting for those teams?
For the Americans, probably Connor Hellebuck.
Oh, yeah, he'd probably be better. I mean, the best goaltending, I think, would either go to the Canadians, because they'll also have Price. I think Price is a little overrated, but he's still a good goalie. And then the Russians will have, like, Vasilevsky's probably the best goalie in the league, and the Russians will have him. So, and, I mean, the Americans probably have an edge over the Canadians in goal. Like, I think I'd take Hellebuck over both Hart and, more likely than, I'd take Hellebuck more than Hart or Price. Like, right now, and probably even in the future, because, Price will be older, so I don't even know if Price would be going to that Olympics. Like, a new goalie might have even aged, but Hart will probably be the starter. By then, he'll be in his prime,
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. And then also, I was just looking at this quick fun fact. Joe McGinley is the fourth black player to ever get in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So.
Interesting. What does that mean to you?
Nothing in particular. I just wanted to say that. Okay,
Yeah, that's interesting. But
okay, I'm going to, let's end the podcast right here.
sure.
Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to hear more and be one of the first to be notified when a new podcast or video goes live. And I hope you guys have a good week. Bye-bye.